Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Avorion episode 11. I'm Enigmaus, and today it's Shakedown day for the spirits. We're in a brand new survival environment, and there was a number of steps that I wanted to go through in terms of getting a feel for how successful the design of the ship was. The first thing that I wanted to do was figure out roughly what it would take in terms of materials in order to build this as the very first ship that I build at the beginning of a brand new game. That was sort of the criteria that I'd set up for myself. In order to do that, I started a brand new survival world. I started one previously just to kind of get a feel for things, and I gathered some materials and I'd done a few things, and I said, no, I want to check this out from the very beginning. So I started brand new in my little drone, scooting around, gathering material from asteroids. It took me just over 20 minutes total to gather enough iron in order to build the spirit from the blueprint. So that was, I would say, a successful kind of outcome. 20 minutes is not a long time to gather materials to build a new ship in a brand new game, I don't think. For me, anyways, it doesn't seem like an unreasonable amount of time. So we gathered the necessary materials, and then I went to the nearest shipyard, built the ship from the blueprint, placed the turrets that we were given, two of the double chain gun turrets and one mining turret. I learned from my tour through the wiki just recently that the ship is limited to 3 turrets, period. And I was a little bit confused at what was going on because I had these turrets and it wouldn't let me place them, but I wasn't 100% clear on why. I stopped progressing through the tutorial once it got to the shipbuilding phase, so there's probably more learning that I could have experienced had I continued with the tutorial. But I just went through the wiki and sort of found out that there's some upgrades that you need to add to the ship in order to be able to add more turrets, etc. So that was good to learn. But this being the first ship, even if I had the upgrades, I wouldn't have applied them because you can't count on having them in the beginning of a brand new game. So we got the ship built from blueprints, turrets in place, hired the crew, got the crew in place, made sure everyone was assigned the way that they needed to be, and then all that was left was to scoot around and wait for the opportunity to go fight something. I didn't want to pick a fight with friendly people, or even, I'm assuming the ships in blue boxes are sort of like a neutral, standing green is friendly. Red, obviously, would be the desirable box color around ships that we would like to shoot at. So I basically was just scooting around, killing time, waiting for some of those guys to jump in, pirates or aliens, whatever it happened to be. During that time, I decided to do a little bit of a speed trial to see what the maximum speed of the ship was boosted, because it tells you as you're building the ship what the ship's maximum speed would be, assuming you have the necessary engineers or whatever on board to make it go as fast as it can go. And this ship was, I think, 302 meters per second, which is as fast as the drone can go while boosted. So the drone goes 200 base up to 300 while boosted. This ship goes just over 300 base. And I was sort of expecting that the scale would be linear, so we would see, if the drone's performance was any indication, a 50% increase in our base speed once boosted, so we'd go from 300 up to 450. That's what I thought. We ended up peaking out at around 1250 meters per second, which is like 4 times our base speed, and I was not only very surprised, but very happy to see that there's that kind of a difference available, just for the sake of getting around from place to place, because there's this kind of debate that goes on in games where travel is a big part of the process. Some people feel like you have to endure the entire process all the time, forever, and that's the way it should be. Otherwise, it's bad game design. No one will ever do the things that they don't want to do anymore if you don't force them to do it that way. So to have that option to get around much quicker is definitely something that I appreciate. Already in the starting sector, going from one asteroid to the next, looking for the resource asteroids and not just the generic stone asteroids, it was already starting to feel a little bit old. It was like, or you see that there's a fight off in the distance and you would like to go and see how that's going to turn out it's just one of those things. So the boost speed was a surprise, but definitely appreciated. And eventually, after enough sort of putzing around and trying not to bang the ship into asteroids, there were some bad guys that showed up, and I wasted no time chasing after them to pick a fight and see how the ship did. We had an opportunity previously when we were building the ship to go after a single enemy ship that was shooting at us. But that was a little bit different because that was a single ship and this is 3 ships. So one of the things that I realized, that I found out very, very quickly, is that the 2 dual chain guns is actually not that bad. It's a fairly reasonable weapon combination for this stage of the game, but there's a bit of a problem. And I'm not saying that in the sense of a problem with bugs or bad design or anything like that, but there's an element of the function of the turrets where if the turret is moving, it's tracking a target and it's moving from one position to the next, it stops shooting when it moves. So unless you're approaching the target dead on or you're at a dead stop, you spend a lot of time not actually firing at the enemy because the turrets are tracking the target, which was kind of a disappointment. There was definitely a feeling of frustration that the turrets kept shutting off because I was approaching it at a bit of an angle. The idea was I wanted to set myself up so no matter how fast or slow I was traveling, if I got too close to the enemy ship, I would just go right past it as opposed to colliding with it. So I was approaching it at a little bit of an offset in order to make that happen, and the end result was kind of a frustrating performance from the guns. Now, I did discover, while I was looking through various other blocks playing the game, that there is something that you can place on the ship that you then place the turrets on, and it locks the turrets into their forward position so they no longer track. They basically point in whatever direction the ship is pointing. And when I first saw that, I was like, why would you even want that? That seems like such a arbitrary restriction to force yourself into, but now I sort of understand a little bit better why that might be a beneficial kind of thing to have. It's just something that I'll keep in mind for the future. The other thing that I obviously discovered is that my entire ship was built out of iron with no armor blocks at all. And that was, I think, the key reason why the ship didn't really perform all that well in the grand scheme of things. Like we kind of crapped out early in that fight. There were 3 enemies and we didn't destroy any of them before our ship was basically knocked out of action and left me scooting around in my drone again. Fortunately, it wasn't an expensive ship, and the design of the hull, I think, is something that I was very happy with when it was finally said and done. We spent enough time reworking it and sort of learning as we went about the build process and how things sort of work. Overall, the purpose of the ship was just to build something to get a feel for everything. As much as we could, just get our feet wet, get an understanding of various different things, and then see how things stack up in the actual PvE sort of environment. So in that regard, despite the fact that it didn't really survive for very long, I was pretty happy with it. So the blueprint is available with the understanding that I'm not offering this as an example of what a ship should be. It's just, if you like the design, if you want to mess around with it, maybe you want to swap out the materials for something different, modify it, reconfigure it, whatever you want to do, that's the option that's available to you with the blueprint. So you can do whatever you want. And the link for that, of course, will be in the information box below the video. You can go check that out. Of course, that leads us to the what next scenario, and I've already got an idea in my mind for a ship design that I'm going to be beginning in the next episode. The purpose will be essentially the same function as what the Spirit build was supposed to be, is a very early game ship that you can use for tooling around in the starter sector, gathering asteroids, fighting bad guys, hopefully surviving quite a bit better, and just basically getting yourself established. So that's going to be what I'm going to be focused on. There's going to be, obviously, learning from our mistakes. There's going to be more armor. There's going to be a little bit more protection around the core block of the ship so that you aren't so easily knocked out of action, and a few other things. There'll be a certain cosmetic aspect to it, but a lot of it will also be deliberately aimed towards the functional side of things. And we'll get started with that in the next episode. So if you want to be notified about that episode, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.